Hey everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause here, and I've got an article for you that basically justifies the travel ban. Remember all of those arguments that, the travel ban is unfairly targeting different countries or unfairly targeting Muslims, and, most terrorism comes from white people in the United States, and all of those kinds of crappy arguments. Well, here, a man accused of plotting attacks in U.S. pleaded guilty in 2015. An Ohio man charged with plotting to kill military members in the U.S. after receiving training in Syria, one of the countries, pleaded guilty 2 years ago to terrorism charges, according to court documents unsealed Thursday. Mohammed, a Somali-born, another one of the countries, naturalized citizen of the U.S., pleaded guilty in August 2015 to supporting terrorism, supporting a terrorist group, and making a false statement to authorities about international terrorism. Federal prosecutors said Mohammed received training in 2014 on weapons, combat, and tactics in Syria, and then returned to the U.S. with a plan to kill military officers or others in uniform. They say he also researched places to carry out the attacks and had booked a flight to Texas. Mohammed, now 25, was living in Columbus when he was taken into custody. It's unclear why almost 2 years have passed since his guilty plea and the unsealing of the documents. The Department of Justice said the plea was sealed because of an ongoing investigation. Well, I'm sure that, investigating the different terror networks and stuff could take a while. And, you have to, I'm sure they investigated all the way into other countries and things like that. So they had to exhaust the entire investigation I'm sure, to release this information. It's reasonable to hold on to this information for a couple of years, in my opinion. Defense attorney Sam Shamansky said Thursday he couldn't comment on reasons for the delay. He said all sides have worked hard to come up with a fair resolution. A sentencing date has not been set. The two charges of supporting terrorism each carry a potential sentence of 15 years in prison, while the charge of lying to authorities could bring 8 years, so up to 38 years. Court documents say that Mohammed obtained a passport to travel to Greece, but instead went to Syria for training and expressed a desire to die fighting there. This just shows that he's intertwined with a bunch of these countries that were deemed high risk that are on the travel ban. And it's not true that terrorists aren't coming from, a lot of times you'll hear that, terrorists aren't coming from these places. Yes, they are. They're coming to the United States. But he returned to the U.S. after his brother was killed while fighting for a terrorist organization affiliated with Al-Qaeda, the document said. Mohammed told someone he wanted to travel to Texas and capture 3 or 4 soldiers and execute them, the documents said. While back in the U.S., he stayed in contact with members of the terrorist organization he had trained with in Syria, and he later booked a flight from Columbus to Dallas in late 2014, the court document said. So that's that. There is one thing I wanted to point out, though, on the other side of the argument. To be level-headed about this, it does say that he was a U.S. citizen, Somali-born naturalized citizen of the U.S. Okay, so he is a U.S. citizen, and I found people complaining that they said he's a Somali-born, Syria-trained Muslim radical named Abraham Sheikh Muhammad, but AP calls him an Ohio man because they're lying scum. This isn't lying. This is completely accurate. I mean, if someone is a Muslim and they were born in Somalia and they were and they were, trained in Syria, where do you think most articles would point to him being from? That his identification would normally be, from the United States. He's an American. Ohio, and they're complaining about this headline, which it's many, many different organizations, because this comes directly from the Associated Press. So, Ohio man accused of plotting terror attacks in U.S. pleads guilty. Well, he is an Ohio man. You don't have to like that. And sure, there are other identifying factors, which even the New York Times explained right away. But they're not lying because they point out he's from Ohio. Well, that he's a U.S. citizen in Ohio. So I don't think we should get this up in arms about a title. So anyways, that's what I've got for you. The important thing here is that Trump's travel ban is completely justified when you look at cases like this. And this is why Trump has this travel ban, is because there are terrorists looking to come to the United States to harm Americans. This isn't some theory. This is actively happening. And this hasn't just happened in the U.S. This has happened all over the world. I mean, France had over 100 victims from a Syrian refugee, quote unquote, but really it was an ISIS fighter that abused the refugee program to get into France and shoot up a bunch of people, with over 100 victims. So, we have to keep, the other side, I should say. Trump supporters know this stuff, but if you're like anti-Trump or whatever, this is why. This is a real danger, and we're not blaming all Muslims. We're not blaming all Somalians. We're not blaming all Syrians. But when you have a Somali-born, Syrian-train terrorist, it's pretty good evidence. And even American citizens, like this guy was naturalized, they leave the country to go to Syria, get trained, and come back. So why wouldn't you put a ban on travel from Syria? Makes perfect sense. Anyways, have a good one, guys.